Welcome everyone to the 26th annual celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy of social and environmental justice. My name is Jessie, and I'm really happy to be welcoming you on behalf of the MLK Event Planning Committee. We're so grateful that you're choosing to gather with this incredible group of presenters this afternoon to close out the weekend and today's celebration of Reverend Dr. King. So we want to celebrate and appreciate the many organizational partners and sponsors who've made this year's celebration possible. Thank you to our founding partner, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and in particular the Environmental Justice Office, and to the New Haven Museum for co-hosting this year's celebration. The Peabody's 26th annual celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy of social and environmental justice is generously sponsored by citizens with additional support provided by the Office of the Secretary and Vice President for University Life and Belonging at Yale. A bit of Zoom support if you need it. Feel free to chat us if you need any help during the presentation, but closed captioning is available for this program. We have a fantastic live captioning going on right now. So that feature can be accessed through the meeting controls at the bottom of your screen. And for any questions during the program for presenters, please use the Q&A feature, which is you can also find at the bottom of your screen. If you have observations that you would like to share, or you're having technical difficulties and you could use some support, please use the chat for that. But again, any questions for the presenters, you're welcome to use the Q&A. We want to begin today's program by acknowledging the current and ancestral stewards of the land that we're calling in from. We acknowledge that Indigenous peoples and nations, including Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Pagosset, Niantic, and the Quinnipiac and other Algonquin-speaking peoples have stewarded through generations the lands and waterways of what is now called the state of Connecticut. We honor and respect the enduring relationship that exists between these peoples and nations in this land, and invite you to, if you would like to put in the chat with our panelists where you are calling in from, the land, the occupied lands that you're calling in from. We can also drop in the chat a resource for finding that if this is something that might be new to you. So we are going to hear today, I'm really, again, I'm sure you'll hear it many times throughout this conversation, but just feel so delighted to be in conversation with this group of incredible community leaders today and closing out the day's celebration by lifting up the work of our several of our local organizations. I want to honor and acknowledge Ms. Sheila Stiles, who really made sure that she is a longstanding member of the MLK Planning Committee, an incredible scientist and community leader and woman. And so she's on the line, but I want to bring her name into the circle as someone who made sure that we created a space for community organizations, representatives to be in conversation today. Folks who are here we would normally be gathered in the museum with organizations and tables set up all across the museum so that you could hear from them directly and engage in activities and learning. And so this feels important to have this space to gather and hear from one another. We'll be hearing from the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society, the National Council of Negro Women, and Common Ground High School, Urban Farm and Environmental Education Center. And I'm gonna use some language that Dottie Green, who is on the call, used about, we're gonna hear what was, what is, and what's to come. So really this is about honoring lineage and legacy in each of our work, the focus of each organization now and where they're headed, as well as how you can get involved. So we'll hear a short presentation from each organization, followed by some questions, and please share your questions again in the Q&A. We're excited to hear from you and grateful you're here. So thank you for everyone for bearing with that lengthy introduction. I'm very happy to hand it over to Ms. Carolyn Baker and Ms. Siobhan Carter-David from the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society. And we'll just ask presenters give you an opportunity to
Yes. Oh,
unmute. There you go.
yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very excited to be here on behalf of the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society. We've participated in this program every year for many years. And this the excitement that we feel each year is the same. And whether we're virtual or in person, it's always wonderful to be able to gather together with like minds to celebrate the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So thank you first to Jesse D'Elia for inviting us yet again to participate in this program, and to Hannah Meyer for your support with the technology, and for your patience as we had to ask so many questions before getting this organized, but thank you. And I want to thank Sheila Stiles as well. She is a member of the board of the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society, and her work is consistent and she is very committed. So we thank her for this effort. And I'd also like to thank all of our participating viewers, those who are members of the Ethnic Heritage Center. Thank you guys for supporting this work, and to the members and friends of the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society who have also joined us. So we thank all of you for being here. So I'm going to start just by giving you a little background. If you are not familiar with our organization, we like to believe that everyone knows that we're here. But we know that there are probably some people who are not as familiar as we would like them to be. So I'll share a little bit about our history, about what we've been doing for the last few years, and then turn it over to Dr. Siobhan Carter-David, who is a real historian. I am just a lover of history, but she is actually a historian and professor of history at Southern Connecticut State University. And so I will turn it over to her to tell you something about what we've been doing in our recent history and what we have planned in the future. So again, thank you. This organization started probably in the late 1990s, I would say, just as a love of Valerie Bertrand and her husband, Donald Bertrand. It was formally organized then in 2003 in their home. She invited a few of us she thought would support the effort to come and to begin the formation of the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society. And it was fully incorporated in 2004. So then we began with an all-out effort to bring the rich, vital history of African Americans to the forefront and to share that rich history and culture with anyone who would listen. And we believe that having a fuller understanding of one's history, even the history of your neighbors, whether they are of your ethnic background or not, makes you a richer citizen, a more informed citizen. And for those who are African American, it certainly shows us our place, our natural place in the world, the contributions that we have made, the rich contributions. And for young people, that is essential in helping them to see their role in making society a better place. One cannot move forward with the efforts toward justice without understanding the truth about who we are, where we came from, how it all started. Otherwise, we're operating in a false narrative, which we see frequently, that needs correcting. And so we have worked in that regard. We've worked with to support the efforts of the legislators who wanted to make sure that African American history would be taught in Connecticut schools. And so we're very proud to have been part of that effort. So over the years, our commitment has just become more based in a personal passion than an academic one. we want to share with anyone who is available to learn what that history is and what we've uncovered over the years, that there are just so many untold stories that even people of African American descent have no knowledge about. So we're very excited to inform ourselves as well as informing the larger public. So we have, so that's how we got going. And unfortunately, our founder, Valerie Bertrand, is no longer with us, but when she did pass on, she left a legacy of passion for history and passion for sharing that with those of us who were serving on the board. And so at that point, Diane Petaway, who serves as the co-president of the organization, and I joined forces to see that her work would continue. So in that regard, what have we been doing? Well, over the last several years, we bring in presenters. We have been bringing in presenters, people of note, who either would share something of their own history or would help us understand something that would be going on currently. And so just to mention a few of those notable speakers, we started, I think, with Judge Constance Baker Motley. She was one of our very early presenters and receiver of our Lifetime Achievement Award, which we used to do every 5 years. We sort of are on a little hold right now with the COVID restrictions, but we were very pleased and honored to have her presence, followed by the Adam Clayton Powell III. We've hosted Dr. Lonnie Bunch before the National Museum of African American History and Culture was opened. He came here to speak with our organization, and those who attended had an opportunity to meet him. And then we followed that with a trip to Washington to visit the museum when it opened. Dr. Sonia Sanchez has come to share with us. Lately, Tamara Lanier, who was, you may have heard her name in the news as one who was working to regain the property, photographs of her ancestors that Harvard University now holds. So she was suing them to get ownership and possession of those photographs. So she came to talk to us about that process and how it was going. She's still involved in that work because she did not prevail in the last visit to the courts, but we have every hope that, you know, her pictures of her family should belong with her family, unless the family decides that someone else should share. We host a film series each year, and before this pandemic, we would host those film series on the campus of Southern Connecticut State University. Of course, we're not doing that now, but we were able to do some things online that Dr. Carter David will tell you something about. So in addition to the film series, we've had numerous Kwanzaa celebrations and that were always hosted on campus. And that was always a lot of fun and an opportunity for people in our community to gather and share and fellowship and share talents and with each other. And during those Kwanzaa celebrations, we would also have presenters come and talk about the history of Kwanzaa and what it would mean and what it means to participate in it, as well as various talented drummers and dancers and artists. So we look forward to the time when we can get back and do that again. And it's just a wonderful holiday celebration as well as a learning opportunity. So then after that, we continue to be busy. We continue to seek presenters who will come and speak with us. And if you've had, and one that we thought was quite important was bringing someone in to work on the recognition of Ebenezer D. Bassett, And so Father William Fothergill was here to talk about that. And so that was very interesting and important, and legislation was pushed along to bring his name to the forefront, because so many people didn't know who Ebenezer D. Bassett was. But again, we relish the opportunities to share as often as we can about our history. And so as a result of that, there are various other organizations who have invited us as presenters, and we seek ideas from our membership or from friends of the society for ideas for information that they would like to know more about. If you have things in your mind that you think, oh, I heard about such and such, but I don't know anything about it, and I would love to know more. So we are your resource for that. And we want you to be able to feel comfortable in turning to us to find that information. And who knows, we might do a whole presentation about it. So be in touch with us. And now I'm going to stop. I haven't monitored my timing very well, but I'm going to stop and turn it over to Dr. Carter David.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that wonderful rundown of our history and the great introduction, Carolyn. Yes, I came to this area to teach at Southern Connecticut State University, and my husband and I are raising our children here, so I feel very, very invested in New Haven history, African-American history in particular. I'm a New York native, but this is where we're living and making our family, and so I'm very happy to be a part of the organization, and I've been with them for a few years now. And what I want to do briefly is just share with you a little bit of what we've done in the pandemic, because it can often be hard to pull people together. You know, we have these rises and drops in the spread of different variations in the COVID virus. And so we have made a very, I think, robust programming schedule for ourselves. And we just want to share a little bit of that with you. So one of the things, and this is just from 2021, we're actually going to be doing the second half of this, but we've had Dr. Karima Robinson come and share her original film, Colored People's Day, Ida B. Wells at the Chicago World's Fair. And this was last year in February. We've also had a colleague of mine, Dr. Mary Phillips, from Lehman College in New York City, do her presentation on Black Panther, women in the Black Panther Party, in particular, Erica Huggins, who has a history here in the New Haven area and in Connecticut at large. And so what you see here on the right of your screen is just happy participants of that program, which we had last March. We've also had a program that we titled Unsung Heroes, the Music of Jazz in New Haven. It's been amazing to learn about the history of Black music, particularly jazz here in New Haven, and the role that Dixwell has played in all that. And so here we had Rebecca Abbott, Alita Staton, and Jesse Hameen come in and talk with us. And most recently, this past November, we did our first annual Black History Walk fundraiser, exploring Lower Dixwell. We had New Haven's own Babs Rawls-Ivy help lead the tour, and it was amazing. We had a great time. We will be continuing to do these walks annually. And I will close out just with some of what we have planned for spring 2022. We had planned to have our open house of the Ethnic Heritage Center, at the Ethnic Heritage Center, where we'd have everyone come and look at the materials held by the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society. We're still working on some of that as we've had a recent spike. And so we're trying to separate ourselves and be careful. We're going to have a genealogy talk featuring Jill Snyder in February, where she's going to be presenting her book, Dear Mary, Dear Luther. It's timely because it's in February, and so it's going to be speaking about the history of Black love. And for Women's History Month, we are planning a women's organization roundtable. We'll be having the Black Greek letter organizations of sororities come in, the National Council of Negro Women, and a few other Black women organizations to talk about their long history of service and sisterhood here in the New Haven area. We will also, as I mentioned already, be having our second installment of the Ida B. Wells One Woman Show, and then also our second annual Black History Walk fundraiser, which will focus on a different area within Greater New Haven. You can reach out to either Carolyn Baker or Diane Pettaway, our two co-presidents, if you'd like to get more information about the organization, and also just be put on our listserv so that we can email to you information about our events. And you can also feel free to join our organization. We have a great time focusing on and celebrating Black history here. So thank you.
Wow, incredible. Thank you both so much. Really very inspiring to see the work that you are providing right now, and very moving to see to witness the history of the work, and in particular, what you shared, Ms. Baker, about the importance of correcting false narratives and lifting up untold stories so that young people can understand their role in history and making the present day even better. So thank you both so much for your sharing and for the work that you do. I hope that you will all continue to, if you have like links or resources that you can drop in the chat for folks, I would encourage you to do that while we're speaking, so folks can stay up to speed on all the events that you have for this spring. So we'll transition now to hear from Ms. Dorthula Green and Ms. Diane Pettaway of the National Council of Negro Women. Thank you for being here, and I'll hand it over to our first speaker.
Thank you. Diane will start.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting us to this, to this community conversation on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I've been with the National Council of Negro Women for over 20 years. Presently, I am the treasurer. Our organization was founded in December of 1935 by Maribel Cloud Bassoon. Her vision at that time was to bring together a group of people, of women, leaders from various different organizations, to address the need for a united organization of women, to have one voice, one united voice, that when we speak, it would show power. Our mission is to lead, develop, and advocate for women of African descent through research, advocacy, and national community-based services and programs on issues of health, education, and economic empowerment. Our national headquarters is located at 633 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest in Washington, D.C., and we own it. There are 39 national affiliates and 200 plus sections in New England. 200 plus sections, 5 in New England. Our national chair is Dr. Janetta Besh Cole. In 1974, Dr. Susan Lincoln and Mrs. Hattie Hatcher Long were selected by the national office to serve as coordinators to seek out women who were interested in reviving the New Haven section. On September the 13th, 1975, we received our charter. Our annual membership dues are $75, life membership dues $500, legacy membership $1,000. You can find us on Facebook, NCNW New Haven, our national website, ncnw.org, or you can use our P.O. Box, which is 8063, New Haven, Connecticut, 06530. And our present president is Mrs. Dorthula, better known as Dottie Green. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Dottie Green, and I'm the president of the National Council of Negro Women here in New Haven. We typically say NCNW as an acronym. I wanted this afternoon to share with you just a general overview of NCNW's work, as well as what we're currently doing. We're a very focused organization. And I do want to share a little bit of my own background relationship to NCNW. As a child growing up in South Carolina, I'm currently 67. And as a child growing up in South Carolina in the Deep South during segregation, in my school, we always had the picture of at least three people: Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, and Mary McLeod Bethune. Mary McLeod Bethune at the time was sort of equivalent to the Black president because she held the highest office in government in the country. I mean, pre that. That's as remember during her lifetime. And she was a woman who was committed to education and committed to the development of excellence in African American community, and was passionate about our children and our community developing and overcoming obstacles. And hence the founding of the National Council of Negro Women put together a lot of the things that she was really committed to. And as Diane said, the general idea was to bring organizations together. And I like to use the word synergy, because when you bring organizations together, there's more power and we can do more as a gathered force. In terms of social justice and as racial justice, which would have been at the time more the term, the National Council of Negro Women was really active as in the early days of the Civil Rights Movement. By virtue of our president and our organizations, then headed, excuse me, during the days of Martin Luther King, then headed by Vivian Carter Mason, as a matter of fact, who was president. And at the time of the Montgomery bus boycott, during the era, the NCNW spent time with and finances to support and help the Montgomery Improvement Association as they did the work that they were doing in the area. As a matter of fact, NCNW would have Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks come and speak to convention in order to raise funds to support the movement. Also during this time, later on after Vivian Carter, the work of Dorothy Height, who was president of NCNW for nearly 50 years, she sort of formulated or framed NCNW as we know it, much as we know it today. And with Dorothy Height's work, there was a movement called Wednesdays in Mississippi, which was again an effort to bring social justice to housing and other areas of injustice. And this was sort of I would say almost clandestine or secret group. Dorothy Height had convinced or gathered wealthy white women from the North who would monthly fly down to Mississippi to gather, meet with women of color, and to work on issues of housing, work on issues of education with the communities to enhance those communities that were being left out in the general society. So NCNW has had its hand in social justice in this way, and always very much, oftentimes very on the grassroots level, meaning that just really getting in there and making stuff happen. If you would look, even as the flyer today that we have about this conference, on the flyer, there's a woman sort of standing in the back on the left side of King. You can see prominently because most of the other people in the forefront are men. And that is Dorothy Height, who was very prominent and active with what we call the big six of the men who were sort of organizing and orchestrating the Montgomery bus boycott and the civil rights movement at the time. So Dr. Height was able to be a significant voice, though not necessarily, as oftentimes with many movements, women were not at the time not necessarily given forefront, but wisdom from the quote unquote background. And this is one of the ways, some of the ways that NCNW has been very active in social justice and racial justice in our country. And the organization has played a part in ensuring, voter registration, voter rights, even now today, as these things amazes me that, we're still fighting many of the same fights, perhaps in a different way, but the same fight of voter rights, voter education, helping people to understand why voting is important, even when they feel discouraged about the idea of voting, that it's important because voting matters at every level. Even in the even when we had the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, NCNW helped to gather and to connect with organizations. Many of it's what they call affiliates. The 32 affiliates of NCNW gathered, and they all strategized together to help organizations pull together many of the movements and the activities that were going on to get people to the polls, to ensure that people were voting, and to get them to understand why voting again was important. So those social justice issues such as that are really, really important on a national level. On our local level, the National Council of Negro Women, again, we operate oftentimes on a grassroots level. And among the things that we've done, mentoring. We've had mentorships and partnerships with schools to mentor young people, to do tutoring, to support in the classrooms. Those things are not necessarily as easy to do during COVID or in the 21st century, given many of the rules and regulations. However, we've worked with schools and we've worked with organizations that had, reading programs. When the United Way or other organizations had reading programs, we would go and we would be sure we are part of those kinds of programming to encourage young people. We're also involved in providing book scholarships to young people. At our annual Founders Day, we give scholarships to young people for college book support. And one of our flagship program is actually the African American Women's Summit, which was started about 26 years ago. And the summit gathers women's organizations together to present a full-day conference that provides information, that provides workshops, that provides vendors and all kinds of activities to support, educate the community. We've had workshops during COVID. Of course, we could not gather in a large group, but we had virtual workshops and virtual presentations that incorporated issues on racism, issues on COVID, issues on lupus, which is one of the diseases that really strikes African Americans and African American women specifically very strongly. So these are many of the places where we have tried to be vital and just very practical in our approach to supporting African American women and their community. During the pandemic, one of the programs that we initiated, we had hoped to initiate before, but the pandemic certainly made it necessary, was our Stop Period Poverty program. And this is a project that we want to have go on. And we decided that this is a project that we would have go on because women need food, but they also need their feminine supplies. And we're also working on STEM education and activities for young people through our youth advisory council that we are starting to develop. I see I'm 12 minutes up, so I'm done. Thank you so very much.
Thank you both so much. Incredible sharing and incredible work that your organization is doing. Particularly as I listen, some of the things I was struck by is the power of a united voice and gathered force, and in particular, the critical role of Black women in organizing for social and racial justice. So thank you for holding that work. And I know that you all also you make a point of celebrating and giving flowers to those in our community who are doing good work. So encourage attendees to give folks their flower. The folks who are in this room is a really, as you can see and feel, if you didn't already know, a powerful group of folks in this circle. Please celebrate them in the chat if you feel moved to do so. So I will now pass it to Joel Tolman of Common Ground High School Urban Farm and Environmental Education Center.
It is so great to be with you all. Such an honor. I feel a little bit daunted and humbled to be sharing space with Ms. Baker and Dr. Carter David, Ms. Dottie Green, Ms. Petaway, and so grateful to be able for this opportunity to celebrate and continue Dr. King's legacy. This holiday, I think, has always been my favorite of the year since I was a little kid. And I'm daunted by that charge as well. So whenever I'm daunted, I am sort of moved by a quote from Alice Walker that I'm going to share my screen for a second here. And this quote from Alice Walker helps me keep my mind on our own individual part on a day like the celebration of Dr. King, bringing our own imperfect stones to this pile, however small. I appreciate this opportunity. I'll keep my mind on my small stone that I can bring to the pile, and recognize that I and Common Ground are here on behalf of this whole set of organizations working to make New Haven a more just and sustainable place. So I want to just express gratitude for this opportunity. So as Jesse said, my name's Joel Tolman. I've been at Common Ground and in New Haven for the last 19 years. And it's been my home, both Common Ground and New Haven. I'm really glad to call these two places home. If you can see your screen, I have up there our mission. I guess some of you are new to Common Ground's work, and some of you know it very well. Common Ground's a community organization and striving to be rooted in the New Haven community. We're located on 20 acres of city parkland right at the base of West Rock Ridge State Park in the West Rock neighborhood just behind Southern Connecticut State University. And we have three main programs that are rooted in that place: an urban farm, community environmental education center, and environmentally themed, environmental justice themed charter high school. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about our high school than the other parts of our programs, because that's what brought me to Common Ground in the first place as a classroom teacher, and the part that I know best. Though I want to invite you to get involved in all the pieces of Common Ground. And I'm happy to answer questions you have about the whole of the organization, not just the high school. So again, this is our mission. And there's sort of a theory of change here. We want to invite all of our neighbors, whoever would like to get involved, across lines of difference, to get rooted in this place we call home, this city of New Haven and its natural and social environment. And through that, to build community together, to really be in right relationship and build relationships with each other, and grow into our full potential. And that all of us can step forward to help build a more just and sustainable community together. So that's what we're trying to be about as an organization. Common Ground's roots don't run as deep as some of the organizations that are in this conversation right now. We were founded in the early 1990s by teachers, by New Haven Public School teachers, by local farmers, by movers and shakers in the New Haven community. And those folks deserve so much credit for building Common Ground from the ground up. And I do want to honor those founders. But I think I'm moved today to talk about another group of people who helped shape and found Common Ground, and because they've played such a particularly important role in helping us live into our commitment to justice. And because when I think about whose shoulders I stand on most, who I feel most responsible to in terms of their legacy, I think of our students. I think of some of our past students and alumni, and what they have done to make Common Ground what it is. So I reached out to some alumni earlier this week and asked them about what they hope Common Ground is from a justice point of view, and would just love an opportunity to share a couple of their stories to give you a sense of the work we're trying to do around environmental and social justice in New Haven. So I came to Common Ground in 2003. That was 6 years after we got started. So I didn't get a chance to work directly with the first 60 students who showed up in 1997, who took a risk on this new school. I can't imagine what it felt like to them and their families to show up as the first 60 students to this new place. There wasn't a building. There was no school to go to. They took classes, they borrowed classroom space from Southern, who kindly offered that space and walked over to campus every day after school to build the school from the ground up. So in 2013, some of my students were interviewing some of our founders, and I got a chance to meet Nicole Wells, who was one of those first 60 founding students. And what Nicole shared during that interview struck me so much. She talked about like arriving on campus to absolutely nothing, and showing up literally to school with a hammer and nails and helping to build the school from the ground up. And I love showing that video of Nicole talking about building this place and coming back 20 years later to see it still standing, the things she built still standing, in hopes that new students will also feel that sense of like ownership of this space. I think that's a core part of what Common Ground is. We feel like by having students do real work for public audiences, they can make New Haven better, they can make this place better, and it's a really powerful way for them to grow as well. Another young person, Common Ground alum, who feels like such a powerful piece of this work to sort of reclaim Common Ground and build it from the ground up to build whole green, healthy, welcoming places in our city is named Tatiana Torres, who graduated in 2016. I think my first real memory of Tatiana from her 9th grade year is her showing up to school with a homemade incubator that she made out of reclaimed parts to incubate chicken eggs. Another image that really sticks in my mind about Tatiana is of her coming upon, I think it was a Canadian goose that was being attacked by some kids in her neighborhood, and saving that goose and telling them to like be nice to living things, and then keeping that goose in her bathtub in her apartment for a couple of days while she found a spot to animal rehab center that would take it in and heal it. I feel like those are images that stick in my mind of Tatiana. While she was at Common Ground, she worked through this program we helped called Green Jobs Corps to work on our farm, to walk lots of local streams, finding sources of pollution and solving those, working with city residents to turn a bunch of corners of our city into urban oases. And her senior year, Tatiana took what she was learning through all those efforts. She looked across the street, right across the street from Common Ground campus, to this piece of abandoned land that was home to a lot of illegally dumped garbage, and hooked up with some staff and some other students to reclaim that place, turned it into this beautiful little horseshoe-shaped oasis that has trails, has native plants planted down there. And it's a place I go next to our campus whenever I need to relax and get grounded and get refocused. It's a place our environmental science students go to study water quality. It's a place where a new generation of Common Ground students is taking on paid work to do restoration work. That sort of student leadership of seeing a place that could be beautiful, that is beautiful in its own way and making it more so, that feels like a piece of Common Ground's work in New Haven that I really value, and a form of leadership that Tatiana take that I really value. And I do want to honor and value that there are other organizations like the Urban Resources Initiative and Gather New Haven, Tyshawn Harris and Raven Blake, through the work they've done in Love Fed New Haven and other organizations. Folks like Connie Vereen, who showed up every week to the mayor's office for years until they responded to help create Cherry Ann Park. There are lots of folks doing this kind of work to reclaim spaces and make them beautiful in our city. And Tatiana is definitely part of that. Another student I think about, past student I think about every time I walk onto our campus, is Janisha Kadka, who graduated in 2019. More than any other student I can think of, Janisha has done work to make Common Ground a welcoming place for everybody who sets foot across our campus, with a particular focus on students who are newcomers to the United States, students who are English language learners. Some of the ways she did this are super visible on our campus. Janisha researched where all of the members of our community, what countries their families call home, and raised money to buy flags to put up in our multi-purpose room to greet them so that they know this is their home and their place every time they walk onto our campus. Some of the things Janisha did are less tangible. She took up the leadership of an organization one of her friends, Omar, founded called the Speak Club, which is just meant to be a space for students who are newcomers to the United States, who are first or second generation immigrants, who speak a native language other than English, to come together as a community. And it's unapologetically a space for them, and want to honor students who can name and claim the value of a space that is really for them, that they need. Another thing that's remarkable about Speak Club and about Janisha and the other students who've led that is in each year they identify 2 more students who are going to take leadership in the next year, and pass that on in a really powerful way. And that's a form of student leadership that I feel like lots of us could learn from. The last student who I want to mention, not all students who have helped shape and found Common Ground have such physical manifestations of their presence on our campus. When I think of Kaylee Solano, who graduated in 2017, I think of her more as a creator of experiences and spaces than a steward of natural environments. She's an organizer who helps other students find their voices, find their power, claim their power. Kaylee helped organize and facilitate fishbowl conversations where students talked and adults listened, that I feel like really reshaped who we are as a school. She showed up to lots of conversations that would normally be dominated by adults, and played a role as full participant in those conversations. And I feel like one really important part of her legacy is our classes are much more rooted in New Haven than before she got involved. As a student, Kaylee learned about this amazing style of theater called Theater of the Oppressed, that's about giving us all an opportunity to rehearse for the revolution, rehearse for the future that we want to see. And Kaylee thought that all students deserved access to that. And so she started modeling that small, and then she teamed up with the education director of the Elm Shakespeare Company in New Haven to actually design a new class at Common Ground. Kaylee's back as an educator on our campus right now. And when I was talking with her about this panel, our conversation was interrupted by that person who leads the acting classes at Common Ground. It was so neat to see Kaylee, the spark in Kaylee's eye, as she saw that something she had created as a student 5 years ago is impacting absolutely every student who walks across our campus now. So there are lots of students whose legacies I'd love to lift up in this conversation. And I want to honor that there are lots of them who have shaped our place in this ways. I feel like that's something that's, I hope that is true of Common Ground, that we help students lift up their voices. But I know that our time is limited. So why am I telling these stories? It's in part to honor these powerful, incredible young people. It's in part to acknowledge the families, their families and their teachers and their communities who supported their leadership and growth. And it is in part to welcome you all in as well, everybody who's listening and everybody who's part of this panel, to come visit Common Ground and see this place young people have helped build, and also to show up and help us take it to its next place. So thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Joel. Really a treat to also see students of mine also when I was an educator at Common Ground. So it's feels very special, and gratitude for lifting up environmental justice, and in particular, I think the importance of recognizing young people as teachers and as part of the lineage of our work. I think thinking back to the opening roundtable on Thursday, and folks talking about the civil rights era movement, and movements now being movements of children in many ways, and led by young people. So I'm grateful that you can lift up the role of young people in New Haven. So thank you all so much for blessing us with your sharing and your presence and your ongoing work in our community. I think I want to invite folks to share questions that you have in the Q&A. We may actually only get to one or two questions, but I think, let me see. I think that I will ask, I was listening to Dr. King's mountaintop speech this morning, and yeah, thinking about his legacy and his blessing to us in his life and the work that he did in his very too brief lifetime. But wondering if folks could speak to, this may actually, we can treat this as a closing question so that you each have some time to answer. But wondering about if you could share about your vision and hope for the impact of your work in New Haven. What is your vision for what New Haven can continue to grow into? And
I'd like to go really quickly, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
You know, one vision I have for the Greater New Haven African American Historical Society is for us just to continue doing the work of sharing the history of Blacks in New Haven, particularly because having grown up in New York and hearing the way people talk about Connecticut today, people don't understand the impact that African Americans have had in the state, or in some cases that we're even here in Connecticut. And so I think the work we do is important in that way. I hear it in people say things, or you hear it in pop culture, that people outside of this area of the country don't know about how rich African American history is here. So I think we're going to continue to do that.
This is Dottie. Can I hear myself? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's important. She said it's important that we, that we stay active in the life of the city in terms of civically and socially, so that we recognize that we have been we've contributed valuably to this community, to this city, that we make sure that we own that value, and that we continue to contribute in those ways, and that we make sure we educate our community to understand that being proactive is a power, and it's important to always do that, to be proactive. Thank you.
I would just like to see, as we talk about continuing to share our information, our history, our culture with everyone, because the struggle for social justice is as alive today as it was when Dr. King first opened his mouth as a young man. And the needs, the same needs for voting rights, for housing, for education, all of those are still needs today. And as many people begin to understand who they are, where they came from, how the struggle affected them, how resilient they are, how powerful they are, what they have endured, what they can contribute, then our young people can see where their role is, where they can step in and continue to lift up their future. And particularly as we lift up these stories of all of these people that very few people have any familiarity with, as Dr. Carter mentioned. So we're very excited about what the future can hold, and we invite you to join us.
Yes, a reminder to please follow the links, to follow up by email, show up at events. Really an incredible wealth of opportunities that you all have shared. We have space, if anyone else would like to comment, we have space for one more.
Oh, there's another question there, I see.
There's, I think mostly we're coming to the end of our time. I'm going to facilitate a couple. There's praise coming through in the chat, additional questions. I'm going to facilitate a couple connections with attendees and speakers. But I think Ms. Baker will close out with your comment. And yeah, I just want to again express deep gratitude to each of you for your sharing today and for the work that you do in our community, the ways that you show up. Very humbled and grateful for your presence, your commitment, and your vision. So thank you all for being with us today and being in this incredible circle. And I hope that it nourishes you and inspires you as you move into the rest of your day and the celebration of Reverend Dr. King today. And in the work that you do in your life. So thank you so much. Be well, be safe. Thank you for joining us. And I do very much hope that we'll be able to be with one another in person next year. So until then, be well. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.